nice of you to help, Spencer. It's much easier with someone else wrestling with the furniture instead of wrestling me.
I like to keep busy, Chrissy. There's not much for me to do when the Whitneys are away.
And I'd like to apologize for my behavior last night.
Why?
I acted like a fool. I was a scared rabbit jumping at every sound. But you know, I couldn't help it. Especially after all that's happened in this house in the last few weeks.
Well, that's perfectly understandable. Oh, excuse me.
Right.
Sometimes your imagination just takes over and you begin to hear and see things that don't even exist.
My imagination takes over without being asked. Oh, Mrs. Saxon, shouldn't you be in bed?
Chrissy, will you turn off that infernal machine? I can't hear a word you're saying. That's better. Now, what was that?
Shouldn't you be upstairs resting?
No, my dear. I really do feel much better this morning, thank you. And thank you, Spencer, for calling Dr. Kavanaugh last night. It was the wisest thing to do, really. An ounce of prevention, you know.
I'm glad you think so, Mrs. Saxon. I'm obviously responsible for your fainting spell last night. I certainly don't blame you for reacting the way you did.
I must admit, it was just the shock of seeing you standing there with that weapon. You see, Spencer, I am not fond of guns. To put it more bluntly, I abhor them. And I'm very glad to see that you are not wearing that thing this morning.
I don't think there's much necessity for it now, Mrs. Saxon. I believe we're quite safe at the moment.
There's nothing left to do except to face it. We really overslept, you know.
It's no wonder. We stayed up half the night waiting to get back in the bedroom just to look at Skylar's watch.
Yeah, but there's so much activity downstairs last night. What else could we do except sit around and wait?
You know, I wish we could have heard more of what was going on downstairs, or at least understood it.
Yeah, I do too. All I could get was bits and pieces. Obviously, somebody was ill and they called the doctor.
You know what's bothering me is I wonder who was on the phone talking about Gunther.
I do too. Who was that?
I don't know. At least we heard some of the conversation. Shh, be quiet. Anything?
No, I don't hear anything at all. They must all be downstairs.
Maybe they're having breakfast. Or maybe they're preparing some lunch. Gavin, I'm starving. Aren't you hungry?
Of course I am. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do. We can't even go out. We could send out for Chinese food. I guess we can't do that either, can we?
Seriously, what can we do?
Pretend we're dieting.
You're funny. You're really...
Honey, we can't go down and risk getting caught until we see that that watch was the same one that Gunther had on when he died.
I know. And if we don't, then this whole crazy attempt has been a waste.
Exactly.
The only problem is we can't go in the bedroom in broad daylight. Gotta wait for nightfall. And who knows, we might starve to death by then.
Who'd have thought it would end like this? always above a kitchen. Jody, look at this.
What?
Do you know what this is? This is dumbwaiter. This is what they send food up in from the kitchen.
Terrific. How about we send a little note down and order up some egg rolls?
I think that one of us is going to have to go down and get some.
Sleep all right last night, Nora? Oh, I did, Mrs. Kavanaugh. It's quite comfortable. It was very kind of you to suggest that I spend the night.
Well, it was the least that I could do since I kept you here so late last night. I just lost track of the time. It seemed like there was so much work to be done. But you mustn't let me do that. When you've had enough, just raise up your hand and say, stop.
I told you, I don't mind at all.
Well, it's just the nature of the business, I guess, these unpredictable hours. It's true for both Miles and me, I'm afraid.
Yes, Dr. Kavanaugh especially has impossible hours, doesn't he? He had that house call last night, and I know that he left very early this morning.
Yes, it's even more complex for him because not only does he have his office practice, but he works at the hospital, and he does forensic work for the police department.
Well, with all those demands on his time, you mustn't get to see him very much.
Well, I've made my peace with that. Besides, we compensate for it because when we are together, we work harder to make those times special. For example, he's going to come home from work this afternoon to have lunch with me.
Well, some other women might be less tolerant, or perhaps a better word is less trusting. I'll get that. Hello.
Hello, Nora. May I speak to my wife, please?
Yes, of course. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Ah. How is the good doctor?
Fine. And how is the good doctor's wife?
Looking forward to lunch.
Oops. Well, that's why I'm calling. I'm sorry, honey, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to make it.
That's what I get for nagging, huh?
I still have one more patient to see, someone who was scheduled at the last minute, and I can't get out of it. Please tell me I'm forgiven.
You're forgiven. That's all right, honey. I understand. I really do. Don't worry about it. We'll make it some other time.
And we'll steal a longer lunch, I promise. I'll see you later, sweetheart.
Bye-bye, darling.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to be one of those tolerant wives you talked about, Nora, and Miles can't make it home for lunch.
Duty called.
Yes, I'm afraid so. But maybe you could have lunch with me, will you?
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Kavanaugh. I'd like that. But I'm afraid I've already made a tentative lunch date.
Oh, well, okay, another time. I'm going to get some more tea. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'm just about finished in here. Thanks again for helping, Spencer.
Anytime, Chrissy. Would you like me to take care of that for you?
Thank you. Are you hungry, Mrs. Saxon? Should I bring you a tray upstairs?
No, my dear. I'll have something in the kitchen. It's my favorite room in the house anyway. Is the mail in yet?
Yes, ma'am. Right over here.
Whitney residence?
Spencer, Nora Fulton. I want to talk to you at once.
Oh, really?
That's what I said, at once. We have to have a little chat about your new job.
Got into your apartment last night. What happened?
Somebody picked the lock, searched my whole apartment, and then didn't take anything.
You know, there's been a strange rash of robberies lately. Two of the Whitneys.
Who the Whitneys?
Yeah.
I didn't know there'd been a second one.
It was the night of the opening of the Whitney Dance Company.
I totally missed it in the paper.
Well, there wasn't any story. They didn't want any publicity.
But they reported it to the police, didn't they?
Oh, yes, they did. And I suppose any police report is public domain, so he could have printed something about it. But Schuyler Whitney had decided that he wasn't going to press charges because everything that had been stolen was returned to him.
Returned?
Mm-hmm. Well, too bad. It's a good story wasted.
A strange story wasted. But then what happened at my apartment was so strange. I mean, the fact that nothing was taken. I mean, not that there was that much to take, but...
Valerie, do you think it's possible that there was so much publicity about the money that you're supposed to be coming into?
I think that's exactly what it was, Nancy. I'm afraid that there are a lot of people out there that think I have or am coming into a lot of money, and that makes me a perfect target.
Well, it's a remote possibility.
Yeah, maybe I'm exaggerating it a bit, but... No, I can't help thinking about it. Wondering about people's motives. Well, that man who's been following me.
Yeah, that is something to make one nervous.
But I've decided how to handle it next time I see him.
Well, I hope you look for the first policeman you can find.
Well, yes, if there's one in the vicinity. Otherwise, I think I should just confront him. Go up, say, look, sir, who are you and why have you been following me?
Valerie, I believe in getting honest answers, but I also don't believe in taking unnecessary chances.
Well, neither do I, but that's what I intend to do.
Table for one, sir. I'll have one for you in just a minute.
If you're confident up north, raise your hand. If you're confident in Dixie, raise your hand. If you're sure from east to west, sure is what you love the best. Raise your hand if you're sure.
From the bleachers to the magic, sure go.
Avery, isn't it?
Yes.
Your first name?
Jinx. Lately, that seems to be an apt name.
Oh, I'm sure that's only temporary.
Actually, Jinx Avery is not my real name. I use it for the stage.
Ah, you're an actress then, huh?
Mm-hmm. Admittedly, not a very successful one, but I keep trying.
Well, are you working in something in Monticello now?
We're in rehearsal right now for a showcase production. I've been having a little difficulty lately.
What do you mean, difficulty?
Well, it's funny, but somehow I've gotten off the track. You know, frequent headaches. I've been oversleeping. I've never done that before, especially when I'm involved in a production. And I've been fluffing my lines. Sometimes I forget them completely, even when I know the scene perfectly.
And that's not usual, I assume.
Not at all. It presents problems. I mean, not just for myself, but for the other actors and the director. I'm afraid I've been responsible for some really messy rehearsals lately. In fact, the director insisted I see a doctor. He threatened dismissal unless I did.
So that's what brought you here to me today?
Yes.
And who was it that recommended me to you?
A friend of mine, Bambi Jansen. She mentioned your name.
Sure, I remember treating Bambi. She was one of the dancers in the Whitney company.
Yeah.
Right? Well, go on, go on.
Well, it's strange, Dr. Kavanaugh, but generally I feel fine. It's just that these lapses happen when I least expect them.
Well, all right, we're just going to have to start looking for the cause. I'll tell you what, we will begin with a few preliminary questions about your medical history. If I can find a pen.
Okay. I can't seem to pick it up. Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, that's all right. Sometimes, you know, the first visit to a new doctor is something that makes people nervous. Let me just do something for a second. You sit back and relax with me. I'm going to just use this flashlight, and I'm going to pass it back and forth in front of your eyes. I want you to follow the light as best you can. Follow the light.
You look troubled.
No, I'm just concentrating.
You know, a lot of men have looked in my eyes, but they've never appeared troubled. I mean, sometimes they describe what they see as limpid pools. You don't say anything.
Well, they're absolutely right. Your eyes are beautiful limpid pools.
And what else do you see?
Let's just get a little of your medical history first, shall we?
Just coffee, thank you. Would you care to order?
It can wait. But what I want to know can't.
What's on your mind, Nora?
I told you. I want to know about your new job and how you came by it. Quite a coincidence, wasn't it?
There's nothing mysterious about it. It was quite simple, really.
How simple?
I read about Gunther's death in the newspaper. Apparently, he left a good job behind, and since I was in need of a job, preferably a good-paying one, I decided to offer my services to Mr. Whitney. He accepted. That's all there was to it.
Quite the opportunist, aren't you, Spencer? You always were very quick to seize the moment. You're always the one to profit by someone else's loss.
Like I told Mr. Whitney, when a door opens, walk in. Anyway, what about you? Isn't that what you just did? Or is it just a coincidence that you're working for the doctor who attended Gunther just before his demise?
Mm-hmm. I read the papers, too. And besides, I don't work for Dr. Kavanaugh. I work for his wife.
There you are, sir.
Thank
Are
you.
you ready to order now?
No, thank you.
What's in that head of yours? Dirty little secrets, I'll bet. Just what are you up to, Roxanne?
Don't you ever call me that. I am Nora Fulton, and don't you forget it. And if we ever happen to run into each other again, I want you to be sure to remember that.
Seeing you again is a treat. I would gladly do without, Nora.
You're afraid of me, aren't you?
Why in the hell should I be afraid of you?
You took Gunther's job. You're greedy, Spencer. You crawled out of the gutter and you took a dead man's job. And I don't forget slimy things like that.
I needed the job. It was available and I took it. It's not my fault that Gunther was killed.
Well, no one said it was. But it's somebody's fault now, isn't it?
All I know is what I read in the newspapers. They said that... Wait a minute. What are you up to? What are you planning to do to those people you work for?
Come now, Spencer. No one can hurt the Kavanaughs. They're perfect people, the ideal couple. And nobody can destroy that.
Wonton soup and egg rolls, too.
You might have to settle for hard-boiled eggs, too.
Okay. And be careful, I'm scared. Thanks.
I'm too hungry to be scared. Just don't drop me, okay?
Trust me.
Oh.
Mrs. Saxon?
No more, Chrissy, thank you.
You are certainly a Democrat.
How did you know?
Well, you're so democratic. I mean, just think, a great lady like yourself would be taking a meal in the kitchen.
Oh, that's nonsense. Why, my first husband, and I had many meals in this kitchen. Yes, Chrissy, there was many a family conference in this room over scrambled eggs and coffee, to say nothing of midnight snacks.
Well, I think it's marvelous of you.
My dear, there's nothing marvelous about it. Now, Chrissy, there is something you are going to have to learn about so-called high society, and that is even queens use...
Use what, Mrs. Saxon?
The facilities. Well, now, I've had a very nice luncheon, thanks to you, but I think I'm feeling a little tired. So I'm going back upstairs and lie down for a while.
I'll go up there, too. I still have a few things to do up there.